They're the ones who bite their tongues until they taste copper, who swallow their words so often they've forgotten what their real voice sounds like, who've mastered the art of dying a little inside while keeping their face perfectly composed. You know them. You might be one of them. They're the kids who became adults way too fast because somebody else's feelings were always more important than theirs. The ones who learned that good girls don't get angry and real men don't cry before they could even tie their damn shoes. These are the walking time bombs that never explode, the pressure cookers with broken release valves, the ones who turn their rage inward like a blade, cutting themselves with their own silence. And here's the kicker nobody wants to admit. This might be the most dangerous rage of all, because while everyone's watching for the loud ones, the dramatic ones, the ones who throw dishes and slam doors, these quiet ones are drowning in their own unexpressed truth. They're the ones whose bodies keep the score in migraines, insomnia, and mysterious illnesses that doctors can't quite pin down. Tonight, we're diving deep into the most invisible fury on the planet. The kind that doesn't burn hot, it freezes cold. The kind that doesn't scream, it whispers itself into chronic fatigue and autoimmune disorders. If you've ever felt like you're choking on words you can't say, if you've ever smiled while literally dying inside, if you've ever wondered why you feel like screaming but no sound comes out, buckle the hell up, because we're about to explore what happens when a lifetime of swallowed emotion. Picture this. You're 7 years old. You fall off your bike, scrape your knee, and the tears start flowing. Because that's what humans do when they're hurt, right? But instead of comfort, you get, "Toughen up, kiddo. It's just a scratch. Quit being such a crybaby." In that moment, something breaks. Not your knee, that'll heal in a week. What breaks is the connection between feeling and expressing, the trust that your pain matters, the belief that someone will catch you when you fall. That kid learns to bite down on their tears like they're swallowing glass, and every time they do it, they get praised. "Look how strong you are. Such a good kid. So mature for your age." What they don't realize is they're being trained, conditioned, programmed to prioritize everyone else's comfort over their own truth. Fast forward 20 years. That kid is now an adult who apologizes for breathing, who starts every request with, "I'm so sorry to bother you," but who's become so emotionally invisible that people straight up forget they have feelings. Carl Jung had a name for this. The return of the repressed. All that swallowed emotion doesn't just disappear, it goes underground. It becomes part of your psychological bedrock, shifting and settling and waiting for the day when the pressure becomes too much. There's a type of rage that doesn't burn. It freezes everything it touches. You know these people. They're the ones who never lose their cool, never raise their voice, never seem to get ruffled by anything. They're calm in crisis, steady under pressure, reliable as gravity. They're also slowly turning to stone from the inside out. This isn't the fiery rage that torches everything in its path. This is liquid nitrogen fury, the kind that preserves everything in a state of perfect, untouchable stillness. These people don't want to hurt you. They want to disappear before they become a burden. Their anger doesn't seek destruction. It seeks invisibility. It's the rage of someone who's learned that their emotions are inconvenient, their needs are optional, their pain is negotiable. Watch them in action. They're the ones who smile when they're dying inside, who say, "I'm fine," when they're anything but, who remember everyone's birthday, but somehow forget their own needs matter, who tip generously even when the service sucks because they literally cannot bear the thought of being difficult. Their bodies tell a different story though. Migraines that arrive like clockwork. stomach issues that doctors can't explain, insomnia that visits like an unwelcome relative who won't leave. Viktor Frankl, who survived literal hell on earth, said something profound. Even in concentration camps, survival wasn't about physical strength. It was about maintaining some inner space that couldn't be invaded. But what happens when you build that inner space into a fortress? When protection becomes prison? When the walls that keep the pain out also keep the life out? That's when you... Here's the thing about pressure. It builds slowly, then releases all at once. For years, maybe decades, they hold it together. They're the reliable ones, the steady ones, the ones everyone counts on to keep their crap together when everyone else is falling apart. Until one day, they just can't. It might be triggered by something tiny, a cashier being rude, a friend flaking on plans, someone cutting them off in traffic. Something that would normally roll right off their back becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's when the dam bursts. But here's what's wild. It's not the explosive, destructive kind of breakdown you might expect. It's more like melting, like watching an ice sculpture slowly turn back into water. First comes the sadness. Not just about whatever triggered it, but about everything. All the times they said yes when they meant no. All the moments they chose peace over truth. All the years they spent being grateful for emotional scraps while everyone else feasted. Then comes something scarier: hope. The dangerous idea that maybe, just maybe, they deserve more than they've been getting. That their feelings might actually matter. That their voice might be worth hearing. And finally, the most terrifying emotion of all: anger. Not at the world, but at themselves, for all the years of playing along, for all the times they chose to disappear rather than deal with conflict. For there's something ancient wisdom traditions understand that modern psychology often misses. Drought and deluge are part of the same cycle. After years of emotional desert, cracked earth, failed harvests, a landscape so barren it hurts to look at, the sky finally opens up. But when the rain comes for someone who's been emotionally starving for decades, it doesn't trickle. It pours. This isn't the violent thunderstorm of people who learned to explode. This is the gentle, persistent rain that falls for days. The kind that doesn't flood dramatically, but slowly saturates everything, changing the molecular structure of the ground itself. When someone who spent their life being emotionally invisible finally finds their voice, they don't scream. They speak with the quiet authority of someone who's been watching, listening, taking mental notes for 40 freaking years. They don't attack. They simply stop defending. They don't demand. They finally, quietly request. And somehow, this is more terrifying to the people around them than any explosion would be. Because explosive rage burns itself out. It's dramatic. It's temporary. It's manageable. You can wait it out, clean up the mess, go back to normal. But the steady reign of someone who's done being silent, that's sustainable. That's nourishing. That feeds new growth. The most profound part isn't even the anger. It's the grief. Grief for all the years of self-betrayal. For all the relationships that were built on their willingness to disappear. Here's something weird that happens when someone who spent decades as an emotional ghost finally becomes solid. They don't just change, they become magnetic. Not because they're trying to get attention. Most of them would still prefer to fly under the radar. But authenticity creates its own gravitational field. Think about the people in your life who you instinctively trust. Not the loudest ones, not the most charming ones, but the ones whose presence feels real, solid, like you could lean against them and they wouldn't budge. 9 times out of 10, these are people who've made the journey from frozen fury to flowing truth. They've learned something the rest of us are still figuring out: that silence is only golden when it's chosen, not imposed. That peace without honesty is just well-decorated emptiness. That being nice isn't the same as being good. They stop arguing with people because they stop needing to be right. They stop explaining themselves because they stop needing to be understood. They stop managing everyone else's emotional weather because they're finally learning to tend their own inner climate. And here's where it gets really interesting. Their presence starts giving other people permission to feel. Without saying a word about emotions, their embodied authenticity becomes like a tuning fork that activates suppressed truth in everyone around them. Kids gravitate toward them. Animals trust them immediately. Sensitive people feel safe in their orbit. Because there comes a moment in every suppressed life when the voice that got buried starts clawing its way back to the surface. It doesn't come back as a scream, though. It comes back as a whisper. Not as a demand, but as a request. Not as a weapon, but as a prayer. For people who've lived in emotional exile their entire lives, this return of the voice is both terrifying and inevitable. Terrifying because it threatens every relationship built on their silence. Inevitable because souls weren't meant to stay buried forever. Campbell wrote about the hero's return from the underworld, how they bring back medicine for their community. For people who carry frozen fury, the medicine they bring back is permission. Permission to feel, to need, to want, to refuse, to exist without apologizing for taking up space. When someone who's spent their life as an emotional ghost finally becomes solid, the world has to adjust. Conversations change, power dynamics shift. The whole ecosystem reorganizes itself around this new presence. They stop saying sorry for taking up space. They stop prefacing every request with a 10-minute justification speech. They stop taking on blame that was never theirs to begin with. They stop carrying emotional baggage that was never theirs to lift. The voice that returns isn't angry, though it carries anger. It isn't bitter, though it holds grief. It isn't demanding, though it has needs. It's just, when the desert finally gets rain, it doesn't just get wet, it completely transforms. Seeds that have been dormant for decades suddenly burst into bloom. The whole landscape reorganizes itself around new patterns of life. This is what happens when someone who's carried frozen fury their whole life finally allows themselves to thaw. They don't just become emotional, they become ecological. Their presence creates conditions where new forms of life can flourish. They discover that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's precision. That boundaries aren't walls, they're membranes that allow healthy exchange while filtering out toxins. That anger isn't destruction, it's information about what matters. Most importantly, they learn that their feelings were never the problem. The problem was a world that taught them their feelings were problems, a culture that confused emotional compliance with spiritual maturity, a system that benefited from their silence and called it virtue. The ultimate gift of transformed fury isn't revenge, it's recognition. Recognition that their pain was real, their needs were valid, their truth was necessary. Recognition that they deserved to be seen, heard, held, honored from day one. Somewhere right now, someone who's never cried is letting themselves feel that first tear. Someone who's never said no is whispering their first refusal. Someone who's lived as an emotional ghost is choosing to become solid. If you recognize yourself in these words, If this hits somewhere deep and tender and true, know this: your silence was never strength. It was survival. Your compliance wasn't love. It was strategy. Your disappearance wasn't virtue. It was self-protection. But you don't need protection from your own emotions anymore. You don't need to earn the right to exist. You don't need to justify taking up space in a world that should have made room for you from day freaking one. That rage you're carrying, it's not poison, it's medicine. It's your soul saying, remember me, include me, honor me. It's not asking you to destroy anything except the lie that you don't matter. Your voice doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Your truth doesn't need to be comfortable to be valuable. Your existence doesn't need to be convenient to be necessary. The drought is ending. The rain is coming. And everything that was meant to grow is finally going to get its chance. If this found you in the silence, drop a comment below. Let others know they're not alone in the thawing. But more importantly, go speak your truth. Go feel your feelings. Go exist with the full authority of someone who finally knows they belong here. Remember, this is where the unseen becomes truth. And you, quiet revolutionary, are the truth this world's been waiting to hear. The age of silent storms is ending. The season of authentic rain has begun. Welcome to your resurrection.